Okay, so Daniel, you are our representative of someone who is a deeply creative person, but you're working in a law firm, aren't you? So you're kind of straddling across both worlds, that is an amazing kind of takeaway already here. The fact that you can do both, like you don't have to box yourself into one specific niche. So do you want to talk to us? Just tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, all of the creative facets that you're involved in.
Of course. And firstly, thanks so much for having me on and giving me the chance to chat to you and so many people. Yeah, my name is Daniel G. I'm a sports and football lawyer at a law firm called Sheridans in Soho in London. And basically, I'm just a football nut is the short answer. And whenever I was growing up in Liverpool, all I wanted to do was read, talk, listen, speak about the football industry. And as luck may have it, a lot of my family were lawyers in the legal profession. And so I thought as the default early on, well, maybe I'll just take a law degree and see where that may take me. And even if I didn't want to be a lawyer, it still give me really nice, interesting skills. I could go to university, meet lots of interesting people. And go from there. And actually, what ended up happening very briefly was it took me about 10 or 15 years to actually get into the sports and football industry. And I was doing all types of other types of law, like, for example, the agriculture industry, car parts, automotive industries, aviation law. I went round the houses. But the interesting thing that I realized in hindsight was all of those experiences, all of that ability to be a good lawyer first, held me in really good stead for then when I sort of transitioned more into the sports and football space.
Absolutely. I mean, if anyone's got any sort of legal question, fire it at you've done it all. You've done everything. I mean, what a fantastic backstory. And actually, I kind of relate to that because I tried to do law because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I didn't actually make it to the end of the degree, unfortunately. So well done for persevering and look at where
Thank
you
you.
are now.
But actually, it was because I had a bit of a side hustle. Sorry to interrupt, but it was actually what I decided to do alongside the day job was I really wanted to work in sports and I really wanted to work in football. So I started doing a blog when blogs weren't really that common back in 2004, actually. So I started the blog writing about the football industry and all of these cool legal cases involving Luis Suarez and Liverpool Football Club and the takeovers and the disciplinary stuff and things to do with Nicholas Anelka and John Terry and all these famous footballers, because there were these really long judgments that no one, I'm sure, could be bothered reading apart from me, the lawyer who was interested in it. And my idea was to try and make it more accessible. And that was the start of the process to get me a bit more involved in the football industry.
Oh, I love that. Also, like, what a creative start. Like, you were a writer, but you're just writing about the sports world. Like, and that is essentially what we're like the deep dive of what we want to talk about, which is your kind of the two sides of your brain working in tandem together. So, tell us about like your creative kind, like I guess side hustles, but I don't really want to call
Yeah.
them side hustles because they are very major hustles. So,
Well, they started out as very side hustles in truth, is that I always just had a passion for writing, for blogging, for speaking about stuff generally. And really all that I was trying to do was combine my passion, my curiosity, my interest, and try to align it with some of my skills. So, in more recent years, I've written a few books about the football industry, about careers and how to make your dream career. And then I've also started doing podcasts and sort of charity collaborations and all of these type of things. And the way that I see these type of elements is just a part of me. It gives me more to speak about to people. It doesn't mean some people I'm just a boring lawyer who just is at their desk 12 hours a day drafting documents, but it allows me also to speak to loads and loads of people about what they do, and then sometimes align with some of the stuff that I do with them. And that's always, I think, the creative bit, isn't it, really, where new things come around from ideas that people talk to me about.
absolutely. And also, just a quick plug for your books and also the careers stuff that you've done. We've actually included, Daniel very kindly shared some links with me, and I've included them in our big Ultimate Resources spreadsheet that I've just shared the link with everyone in the chat. So go have a look because it is absolutely amazing what Daniel's been able to do. So how is it working in a more corporate job in the creative industries or like a creative, doing creative jobs and then what is it like having to split your time and your mind?
Well, the truth is, a lot of the time I can be creative. It just actually depends on all the creative things that I'm doing. So, for example, one of the big elements where I'm involved in a lot now is building relationships with people. If it's footballers, if it's the owners of football agencies, if it's football club owners, if it's people that work on with social media companies, if it's great brands like Adidas or Nike or New Balance. And one of the things I was thinking about for preparation here is, a lot of the time I'm actually problem solving or doing a negotiation for a particular deal or trying to solve, all difficult disputes or things that happen. And a lot of it just comes down to negotiation. And negotiation, I think, is one of the most creative things that everyone can do. A lot of the time, because you have to be thinking about what the other person needs and the other person wants. You also have to be thinking about how to find solutions to stuff, which is not very easy. Otherwise, I guess everyone would do it. And you have to use all the experience and all the times where things have gone wrong, things haven't gone to plan, dealing with people shouting at you sometimes, dealing with pressurized situations, and thinking about how to come up with creative solutions to difficult problems. And sometimes I can give you some of my tidbits. Is a lot of the time I find that when I'm in those types of scenarios and looking for creative elements and creative outcomes, I just go for a walk, actually. I go for a walk, have a bit of fresh air. My brain then slightly works in a little bit of a different way. And then you start being able to join the dots, which lead sometimes to be able to get to sometimes some good creative outcomes.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Taking a walk. It does. There's a whole thing about the brain waves, isn't there, and slowing them down. And that's very, very important for a creative process.
I think
Um,
that's exactly right.
Young people watching, what I really want them to take away from this is the fact that you do not have to think in a linear way. Like, you can be multifaceted. You can do a corporate job in a creative industry, or you can be a creative in a corporate industry. You can do 5 versions of that in many different ways. Like, what is your take? What do you want young people to, I guess, what's your big bit of advice for young people who might want to kind of explore multiple different options in multiple different areas?
I think there's two things. I think it's all about identity. I think a lot of the time you don't have to be just one thing to one person. You can be lots of things to lots of people. So when I'm having conversations with people, it's sometimes that I will start with saying, well, I'm a football lawyer that's done loads of high profile transfers. Or it might be sometimes that I say, well, I own a charity fashion brand because I know they might be more interested in that. Or it might be sometimes that I say, well, actually, I'm a podcast host and ask questions about the women's game because that's a really interesting part of the football industry that I love right now. So I think that's the first thing, which is you can be a lot of people to yourself and to other people as well. And that's to do with working out fundamentally what's your identity? What is it that you identify with? And I think the second thing, which I'm always really keen on stressing, is whatever industry or whatever element of the creative industries that you want to get involved in, it's always well and good just to say, well, I love football, or I love fashion, or I love music, or I love to be a DJ. But actually, what will stand you apart usually is understanding what are the issues affecting the music industry? What are the issues that stand out in the football industry? What is it about fashion that you love, apart from it just being the thing that you talk about lots? So the thing that will set you apart and make you stand out is being able to have conversations with people around how an industry works, as well as why you love it. And you've got to use that power, that superpower, that curiosity superpower of why you want to keep doing it so much as the fuel for you to build knowledge and then to be able to have those conversations, which then lead in loads and loads of fantastic different directions.
I love that piece of advice. Deep thinking, critical thinking. These are things, like you say, that make you stand apart from everyone else. And those are the people that drive innovation in every industry, any industry, regardless of what it is.
There was a great saying that someone said, sorry to interrupt
No,
again.
no, go on.
There was a great saying someone said to me when I gave a talk recently. They were saying, "Oh, Daniel was so fantastic. It looked so effortless. It looked like you hadn't really, it just was so easy for you." And there was a phrase that Lionel Messi, the very famous footballer, said a long time ago, which says it took him 20 years to be an overnight success. And the thing that people don't see a lot of the time is all the invisible work that so many people put in the background. And that's the same with me to a degree, is that I've been building my knowledge about the football and sports industry for 25 years. I was doing presentations with students when I was 19, 20, 21 years old, because I thought that public speaking would be a good thing, but I don't want to do it in front of loads of people in the beginning because I know I'd be terrible at it. But it's that constant, invisible foundation work that I would always really, really stress to everybody, which is what are the things you're going to do when no one else is looking, when you've got some downtime and you really want to decide this is the career for me, how do I go about doing it? And because of the way the internet is and the way that there's so many different platforms to be able to build knowledge and understanding, the world is literally your oyster, or rather the internet is.
Absolutely, and there's no generation that is better equipped to use the free resources out there and the internet and tech to their advantage than Gen Z or Gen Alpha, or people who are still at school. Like, they know they can do it.
Correct.
Okay, so there again will be lots of people watching who will probably be getting pressure from parents to go into a more corporate world, which is
Mm,
fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm definitely not slandering anything that is, more corporate.
mm.
But if they are creatively inclined, how would you suggest that they set themselves up now to be able to dip their toe in both waters,
Well, I think it's a great one, and it's maybe a great place to consider, which is I was always thinking about de-risking, right? So my worry was, well, what happens if I'll always be a car parts lawyer or an agriculture lawyer? And actually, what I realized is I was okay doing that so long as I had other creative outlets that I could also do at the same time. And this is the thing I say at the time. It might well be that you might never have your ultimate dream job in 4 or 5 years. It might not be that it happens inside 10 or 15 years. But what you've got to do is build and provide foundations for you to do stuff that you enjoy at the same time now. It doesn't mean it needs to be everything and all encompassing. And for a long time, that was what I was doing with my blogging on the football industry. I was writing whilst in the evenings and the weekends because it was my thing. It was the thing I loved doing. So I think sometimes it's not being too idealistic and being practical enough to combine what the job is that you may do that might not be the thing you do forever with some of the things that you want to do now. And when you're putting your CV on, whenever you're having interviews, whenever you're doing stuff, these are the proactive steps that you can explain to people to say, well, yes, this is my job, but actually I love doing this too. And here's all the evidence of all the great stuff that I love doing as well. And so I think it's sometimes the combination of all of that together, which is a great start.
Absolutely. And one can feed into it like that. You can take inspiration from each world and put it into the other world, like you will learn things that you can apply everywhere, which is so important. Okay, in the last couple of minutes that we have, what do you prefer out of all your creative endeavors? What is your favorite? Is it writing? Is it speaking, presenting, fashion?
Mm.
Being an entrepreneur? Like, what is it?
Well, the thing that racks my nerves the most is public speaking. But once I'm there and in the flow, it's sometimes the most enjoyable. I think probably it's writing is the thing I do as a lawyer, as a blogger, as an author. It gives me space to be able to think about the ideas that are important for me. And I think it's very difficult to write well. And the thing that I'm always trying to do is practice writing better because I look at some of the things I wrote 15 years ago and I look back and think, oh, it was terrible. But at the time, I thought it was the best thing that I'd ever done. And so that's the other thing I think you've got to be humble enough to say, well, you think it might be good now, but there's always room for improvement. And that's that bit around always having a mindset of progress and thinking that you can get better, whilst at the same time believing you're good enough to do a good job.
Absolutely, yeah, consistently learning. I think you're right, being humble. I think that's, well, can I just say your public speaking today has been on point, so you've nailed
Oh,
that.
okay, good. I'm glad.
Daniel, is there any other bits of advice or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our young people? Otherwise, we'll let you get on with the rest of your day.
I'm just going to give them 30 seconds on something, if that's okay, which is I get a lot of people reaching out to me and saying, please, can I have work experience and please, can I get involved with your job? And the difficulty with for myself and lots of other people is cynically, it's very time consuming. It's difficult to write back to everybody. And it's sometimes easy to get lost in the noise of everything else that everyone has for a day job. And the thing that I would consider, and I write it in the book quite a bit, is to think about when you're in the position of writing to somebody, how is it possible for the other person simply to say yes to something very easy? And it's not when I say work experience, it might be simply saying, I love that you're a football lawyer and I'd love to write 400 words for you about this next football case or this transfer or something. And you just need to get the foot in the door with a lot of different people. You don't necessarily need to become their best friend straight away, but you just need to start a conversation. And so my view on that, as much as you can when you're reaching out to people cold or otherwise, is just think about how to start off a conversation and to build a longer relationship in order for the person just to say yes to you.
I mean, that is a fantastic note to end on. I'm so glad that you did share that. Thank you so much, Daniel. That's a really, really good, actionable piece of advice there for everyone watching.